Every morning, before the sun had even risen, a frail woman walked up a lonely hill with a bouquet of wildflowers in her trembling hands. She placed them gently on a grave that wasn't hers, whispering words only the wind could hear. But one morning, as tears rolled down her weathered cheeks, a black luxury car pulled up beside her. A man in a tailored suit stepped out, his voice breaking the silence. "Why, Broken Bar, why are you leaving flowers on my wife's grave?" What happened next would change both their lives and heal two broken hearts that had been quietly bleeding for years. Chapter 1. The woman who brought flowers. The graveyard sat on the edge of town, overlooking a meadow where wild daisies grew freely. To most, it was a place of sorrow, but to Maria, it had become her refuge. Maria was a poor widow in her late 40s. Her husband had died 5 years earlier in a factory accident, leaving her with nothing but debts and a heart full of grief. She lived in a small one-room house at the outskirts of the city, working part-time cleaning offices and doing laundry for neighbors. Every evening, she saved a few coins, just enough to buy flowers every Sunday morning. But the grave she visited, a Broken Bar, wasn't her husband's. It belonged to a woman named Elena Ross, a name Maria didn't know until she first found the grave years ago. She had stumbled upon it one rainy afternoon, drenched and sobbing after being rejected from yet another cleaning job. The grave had no flowers, no visitors, just an engraved stone with the words, "Greater than Elena Ross, a beloved wife, daughter, and friend, gone too soon." Something about the emptiness broke Maria's heart. She sat there for hours, talking softly as though the woman beneath the stone could hear her. And from that day on, Maria began leaving flowers every week, believing no soul should be forgotten. To her, Elena became more than a name. She was a silent friend, someone she could pour her heart out to when the world felt too heavy. What Maria didn't know was that Elena Ross had been the wife of Daniel Ross, a billionaire CEO known for his cold demeanor and ruthless business empire. After losing his wife to cancer, Daniel had buried himself in work, abandoning everything that reminded him of her. He hadn't visited the grave in over 2 years, until that morning. It was a Sunday like any other. Maria was placing her bouquet of freshly picked wildflowers tied with a string when the sound of gravel crunching under heavy tires startled her. A sleek black car stopped beside her. The door opened, and a tall man in his late 30s stepped out. He wore an expensive suit, but his eyes a Broken Bar. His eyes were hollow. "Excuse me," he said, his deep voice trembling slightly. "Why are you putting flowers there?" Maria turned, startled and embarrassed. "Oh, a Broken Bar. I'm sorry, sir. I didn't mean any harm. I just a Broken Bar. I thought no one came here anymore." "That's my wife's grave," he said quietly. Silence filled the air. Maria's hands shook as she stepped back. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I just didn't want her to be alone." Something in her words hit Daniel harder than he expected. Didn't want her to be alone. He swallowed, looking at the humble bouquet. "You've been coming often?" he asked. Maria nodded. "Every week, a Broken Bar for years." He looked at her clothes, old, worn, and patched, and then at the fresh flowers she'd brought. "Why would you do that for a stranger?" She smiled faintly. "Because I know what it feels like to lose someone you love, a Broken Bar, and to have no one remember them." Daniel said nothing. For a long moment, both just stood there, a poor woman and a rich man, bound by the same ache of loss. That night, for the first time in years, Daniel couldn't sleep. He kept seeing Maria's wrinkled face and hearing her words. The next morning, instead of driving to his office, he found himself back at the cemetery, carrying a bouquet of roses. Maria was already there. She looked up and smiled warmly. "You came back." "Yeah, Broken Bar, I guess I did," Daniel replied softly. And from that day on, they began visiting together, two broken souls, sitting side by side, talking about the woman who had once brought light into his world and the man who had once brought light into hers. Little did Daniel know, Maria's kindness would soon bring back something he thought he had buried forever, hope. Chapter 2. The CEO who remembered. Over the next few weeks, Daniel and Maria's unlikely friendship grew. He learned that Maria worked long hours but still found time to care for others, bringing food to a sick neighbor, teaching local children to read, sharing what little she had. Her gentleness reminded him of Elena, and the same compassion that had once filled his home. And Maria learned that beneath Daniel's wealth and authority, there was a man who had forgotten how to live. His wife's death had shattered him. He had buried his emotions beneath board meetings and billion-dollar deals. One rainy afternoon, as they stood under the same umbrella at the grave, Daniel asked softly, "How did you do it? How did you keep going after losing your husband?" Maria looked at the flowers in her hands. "By helping others. When you share love, even when you have nothing, a broken bar, it heals you." Her words sank deep into Daniel's heart. That night, he made a decision. He visited Maria's neighborhood the next day. When he saw the crumbling houses and the barefoot children running through muddy streets, something inside him changed. He realized how blind he'd been to the world beyond his wealth. A week later, Daniel Ross announced something that shocked the city: the Elena Ross Foundation, dedicated to helping widows, single mothers, and struggling families. When Maria heard the news, she couldn't believe it. Daniel later visited her small home, carrying a box of groceries and flowers. "I couldn't have done it without you," he said. "You reminded me that love isn't lost when we give it away." Tears filled Maria's eyes. "Your wife would be proud," she whispered. Daniel smiled softly. "No, a broken bar, our friend would be proud. You kept her memory alive when I couldn't." From that day, Maria worked with the foundation, helping others find the same light she'd once lost. She was no longer the poor woman loving flowers alone. She had become the heart of something far greater. And every Sunday, two people still visited that quiet grave, not out of sorrow anymore, but gratitude. Because one act of kindness from a poor woman had awakened the humanity in a lonely man, proving that even in grief, love always finds a way to bloom again.